received the conclusion to Ty West's X trilogy, but can it be worth the desire that we finish this franchise? Welcome to Cinema, where we focus on the film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of MaXXXine. Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? Let me know all that. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you're ready to join the film culture community, where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole by going right into synopsis. In 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress MaXXXine Meeks finally makes her big break, and in the meantime, there's a night stalker that's going about through California and getting through things that are bringing out the blood from her past. And getting right into the positive, overall, this was a great conclusion for what I was expecting out of it, and just delivering on a great premise, going on a sequel of X, while also taking in the nods of everything we got from Pearl, and how that all leads up in this trilogy of sorts that was switched out of order, but just the way they go about that, and just the heightened experience from the detective story that sort of is brought into the forefront of this story, while also having MaXXXine being this aspiring actress, and how we get her in her own role. What we get from Maya Goth is great as always. She's a stealer, and while she isn't necessarily her best, she at least for what we get out of what's written for her, she still does good with everything the script allows and is telling within this story. And so everything that this story has to offer is intriguing for the nature of the horror aspects, the detective mystery, and everything that spins in through in between. And it reminds me of a few good films here and there, Once Upon a Time of Hollywood, for the Hollywood setting, that is really good for the 1980s, building upon that culture and that nature, bringing us back in time to that era. This film production was good for the nature of how well it was brought to life, and making us feel we're really brought in that setting by the language, different places that you're taken into Hollywood, and so how it utilizes its background and its setting as well is allowable for the nature of what we really want for this type of horror film. And it's very different than the other two in its own nature, because it's good for how it's leading up to the end and how it utilizes its resources in a different way, brings out this different setting given its time frame. And so that's what really elevates this experience a little bit more, and also reminding me of Scream 6 in some ways as well, just by the not necessarily being a slasher, but having these little mysteries along the way of who is the killer that's going about this Hollywood, California, and just how that builds upon the film, the questions and things you have to try and answer yourself along the way, keep you intrigued enough for the nature of where it is headed in the forefront of all the ideas it is tackling as a whole. And while it can feel different, it is, for me, something that delivered well on its premise, especially based on how it brings upon the resources, ties into some of the past films of Pearl and X, even if it isn't formally connected in being a direct sequel in its timeline. It establishes and shows the growth of MaXXXine and some other characters that are brought in along the way. And I'd highly compliment the twist that this film has, just with what it reveals within the villain, and also Kevin Bacon. His role was fantastic, and just a few good supporting roles alongside him, but just what we get from Kevin Bacon and the main villain that I shall not reveal just delivers well on what this film is ultimately asking as a whole. And going into some of the mixed moments, there's some ideas with the story that aren't fully fleshed out, or certain characters that we don't get a lot from them before they're sort of removed from the screen, removed from their screen time. And so how we get upon those characters, it's obviously building upon MaXXXine's story, which doesn't progress in a greater, surprising arc that we haven't necessarily seen before from Pearl in what she was doing in that character, or even as the same MaXXXine within X, we don't get as much of the growth or great reveal because certain ideas are already revealed to us. And so what that brings out of the story isn't anything too original or different, and especially referencing back to the films that I compared it to, it is good for what that allows, but for some people, it just may not always bring you into the state of originality that even I sort of want for this film, want for the franchise, because X and Pearl were really great and original for their own things. They were pulled off of certain films with inspiration, and you could see those bits and pieces, but this felt more familiar for the nature of how it builds its story ground. I still enjoyed it highly, but there's some things that may turn people off by the nature of where it is headed with its plot, whether being too familiar or just being in the nature of the culture of the 1980s that doesn't really invest you into certain aspects that could be more intriguing if it was in the familiar setting that we once were with this franchise, where it's headed in this secluded farmhouse area. And so what that has to offer for this, taking it to California in Hollywood, could deliver on different things where the different subplots can be a little bit too much if certain things don't flow out along the way that is expecting for everyone that is watching this film. And so that's just my review on MaXXXine, which I have to rate a simply 8.5, where I highly enjoyed it, and there's only some minor complaints that I would have throughout, even if it is controversial for many of the different people that have been loving it or hating it. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you're not already, join the film culture community. We talk about the love of cinema as a whole. Make sure to comment down below your thoughts, whether you liked it, whether you hated it, or is it somewhere right in the middle. Make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.